Barak Yahawah, Bahashem Yahawashi, Bahashem Rawchaa Qadash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is A Push for Rebellion. And pretty much this title is inspired by something I was listening to earlier. And pretty much, it was the John Todd confession tapes. Excuse me, I was listening to him, and he was going into the Illuminati, the origins and their plans. And then as he progressed on, there was a testimony he was given or giving because obviously in 1972 is when he so-called got saved, and he started his campaign to reveal the international bankers and their whole Illuminati plans. And just prior to that, he was in the military, and eventually he got into this shootout and killed an officer. And pretty much he was going to go to Leavenworth, but senators showed up and generals, and they gave him an honorable discharge and got him off. And eventually he was telling the story of how he was brought up and how some of his regrets, and one of his regrets was not having a childhood, because in witchcraft, as he was explaining, the parents are not allowed to love their children because they don't really belong to them. They belong to the craft. And he was saying that they couldn't beat their children, they couldn't discipline their children, they couldn't really do anything as parents for their children, because their children were going to be programmed to be brought up, to pretty much push that same demonic influence on the world. And the more you understand the truth, the scriptures, and you start to see certain things in the world and the way that they operate and the way that they're being pushed, the more your mind is opened up as to why they're being pushed that way. And this is why, as we refer back from time to time, the interview that Aaron Russo had with Alex Jones, when Aaron Russo met Nick Rockefeller, and Nick Rockefeller asked him what women's lib was all about. And like he said, he had conventional thinking as giving women the same rights as men and so on and so forth, so they could get equal pay and blah blah blah. And Nick Rockefeller telling you idiot. And pretty much the reason for it was to separate the family so that the mother would have to go out to work. Now she would also be taxed. There would be an extra person tax to bring into the economic tax soup, so to speak. There's more money. Secondly, to remove the children from out of the household, being tutored and being brought up in these government public schools, which would pretty much train them in the same fashion as witchcraft when you really think about it. Because one thing that you did have and still have today is what? If the parents beat their children to discipline them, they can call DCYF or whatever it's called in your neck of the woods. And that would do what? Because the parents couldn't discipline their children, that would cause a rebellious streak. And that is the same thing that goes on in witchcraft, which they're applying that to pretty much the world by this public fool system. So I found that very interesting, and this is why you have such rebellious behavior from these youngsters out here, because of the way that they're being brought up in these schools. And all of those, the tenets of witchcraft are being pushed on a large scale, from being moles to casting spells to just being a total degenerate, to doing whatever you want to do, listen to whatever music you want to listen to, eat whatever you want to eat. All of those, are rebellious, or a rebellious, form of being. And this is why the scriptures give us, the things to do with rebelliousness, which the Lord's will we're going to get into. Now let's read the definition for rebellion. I have it here also. Let me read this one, then I'll read the other one. It says, the act of rebelling, open and avowed renunciation of the authority of the government to which one owes obedience. And in this case, they're pushing that behavior against what? Against the Most High. Why? Because the Lord himself said that he would do that here in America, which is spiritually known as Egypt. Isaiah 19:14 says, the Lord hath mingled, Yahawah, hath mingled a perverse spirit in the midst thereof. So in the midst of this whole, God-forsaken place, to put it in those terms, there is a perverse spirit being mingled out here. And what do you think that perverse spirit that's being pushed out there is doing? It's influencing a lot of people to be rebellious and to have that rebellious nature. The word marathaim, I believe it is, double rebellion. Because this place has totally rebelled against the Most High. And pretty much what they're painting the picture of is that America is the so-called God-fearing nation. But look at the behavior of them, because they want this to be the model for the world. This is why in Revelation 17, it speaks about that golden cup in her hand. In Isaiah either 50 or 51, it speaks about that cup. Babylon hath been a golden cup in the Lord's hand. And through America, they've pushed and are trying to push that rebellious lifestyle upon the planet Earth, till everyone can rebel against the Most High. But this is why the Most High is gonna bring that judgment. It says, the Lord hath mingled a perverse spirit in the midst thereof, and they have caused Egypt to what? To err. E-R-R. What does this mean? This is short for error. They have caused Egypt to err in every work thereof. Right, so in everything that is done here and that is taught here, it's causing an error. And that error is against the Most High. It says, as a drunken man staggereth in his vomit. Right, because when someone is drunk, to be in vomit is disgusting. But when someone is drunk, they don't have the mental capability to get out of that vomit. You see? So that's what America is. They're like a drunken man staggering in vomit and pushing this perverseness to the world. Because the nations have drunken of the Babylonian juice, and these nations are mad. They're bugged out and they're pissed off. All right, so going back, it says, and resistance to its officers and laws, either by levying war or by aiding others to do so, and organized uprising. So aiding others to do so is pushing that same lifestyle on everyone else. And this is why the children can do whatever they want to do, because if the parents beat them, they could get their parents arrested, and then the children will be taken away from them and raised up even worse than what they are already being raised by these public food systems in these correctional facilities, which teach them to be better criminals instead of being better citizens. So rebellion, the act of violent or open resistance to an established government or ruler. In this case, we're dealing with the Most High's laws, statutes, and commandments. It says the act of process of resisting authority, control, or convention. All right. Now, let's go to the book of Joshua 1 and 16. This is the Most High speaking to Joshua after Moses passed on, went back in the spirit world. The torch of leading the Israelites, or their mediator, became Joshua. All right, Joshua's name is Yahawashi in the Hebrew. His name was Hawashi, which means deliverer. Moses put the Yah in front, Yahawashi, which means he's the deliverer or he's the savior, because he was the one that led the children of Israel with Caleb into the promised land, because the Lord revealed to Moses that he wasn't going to make it in, because Jake was such a pain in the ass that they made Moses speak unadvisedly, and that cost him, his passage, for lack of better words, into the promised land. All right, but eventually he'll get it because he is Moses. So Joshua 1:16, and they answered Joshua. This is after Joshua, spoke to them, and read, pretty much given Jake, instructions to follow Yahawah Bashem Yahawashi, saying, all that thou commandest us will we do, and whithersoever thou sendest us, we will go. So this is them, the Israelites, telling Joshua that they're going to obey whatever he says. According as we hearken unto Moses in all things, so will we hearken unto thee. And when I read this again today, it brought up, old memories, which had me cracking up. And if any of the apostles or bishops, happen to watch this, they'll they know what I'm talking about. When Haragaja, he was in the school in Connecticut. One day we were reading this story, and pretty much he said, yeah, the children of Israel, this is what Haragaja said. He said, yeah, the children of Israel said, yeah, Joshua, we're going to obey you just like we did Moses. And we started cracking up because pretty much it was like in a sarcastic way. And this, when you read this and you understand the characteristics of Israel, you'll get a kick out of this, because Jake is a rebellious people. But they're telling him, yeah, we're going to follow you just like we followed Moses. Only the Lord thy power be with thee, as he was with Moses, and the Most High was with Joshua and Caleb. So here is the penalty for not obeying and following Yahawah Bashem Yahawashi. Whosoever he be, whosoever of all these Israelites he be, that doth rebel against thy commandment, and will not hearken unto thy words, which is what? The whole book. Not just parts of the book, not just the sweet parts, just the parts that you like, the whole book. It says, in all that thou commandest him, he shall be put to death. So the reason why this rebellious spirit is out like it is because there is no penalty for being rebellious against the Most High yet. And this is why total authority will be reestablished on the earth in righteousness, and this whole rebellious spirit is going to be put out, because there is nothing done to individuals that emboldens them to continue doing what they do. So it says, he shall be put to death, only be strong and of a good courage. And that's why there's a push for rebellion, because as people are looking, there are no penalties being imposed on those who live their life how they want to live it. And that behavior pushes others to do the same, emboldens others to do the same. You see? And this is why you have this demonic spirit out here. And that is, the cup that is in America's hand, that she's pushing upon the whole world. All right? Yeah, this is a good one too. Let me read this one the elder put up. 2 Chronicles 15:13, that whosoever would not seek the Lord power of Israel should be put to death, whether small or great, whether man or woman. Right? So it doesn't matter. Here it says him and he, but whatever applies to the him also applies to the woman. Whatever applies to the man also applies to the woman. All right, now let's go to Exodus 23 and 32. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor with their gods. So we were commanded not to make any covenants or agreements with them. But what does Jake do? They make covenants and agreements with them. And those agreements, what happens? Those agreements cause Jake to rebel against the Most High. And that rebellion, in the long run, is going to lead to their death. That's why he said your covenant with death shall be disannulled, because the Most High is going to disannul it. Because he's going to bring the ruckus. He's going to bring the pain. He's going to bring the judgment to curb people's minds. Because another point with Joshua we were reading, you know, if those things were done and the punishment was meted out, that would lessen, that rebellious spirit out here. Just like during the time of Dathan, Korah, and Abiram, when they rose up against Moses and Aaron, and the Most High opened up the earth, caused them, I believe it was 250 of them, men of renown, and their families and everything that they had, to be swallowed up of the earth. And what do you think that caused? That caused a big stir and a scare among the other Israelites, where they wouldn't dare to oppose the men of the Lord. But now, because you don't see that punishment being meted out, people are emboldened to do what they do. All right, now let's go from there. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 20 and 22. You shall therefore keep all my statutes and all my judgment. And that's why the Lord said not to make any covenants with them, nor with their gods, no agreements. Now this goes with the so-called Canaanites, or with the Canaanites, but you could apply this also to the nations, Esau included, because they're in control and power now. We are not to make any agreements with them. I mean, we have to live, you know, so we do what we got to do. Use the word, is not abusing it. But as far as being locked in with them, no. We ain't supposed to be doing that. Leviticus 20 and 22, ye shall therefore keep all my statutes and all my judgments and do them, that the land, whether I bring you to dwell therein, spew you not out. And this is why it spewed us out, because Jake is very curious. You know what they say about curiosity? It killed the cat. And when they see these nations doing the things that they do, they are emboldened to do it. This is why the Lord said, when you build your altar, don't build it next to the groves. Why? Because the nations would build altars under the groves or near groves to worship their gods. That's how they worship them. And what did Jake do? Secretly, that's what they would do. Back then and now. You know, now they're doing it openly. Back then they were doing it secretly. This is why the Most High showed Ezekiel what these great ancient men were doing behind closed doors. The women weeping for Tammuz, so on and so forth. They were doing that secretly, and they're still doing that today. So this whole rebellious spirit that's being pushed out here is the same thing. It doesn't matter in what fashion it is, because you got to remember that everything that these nations do, they have a priesthood on the left-hand side. They have rights that they do. You know, the way that they operate, witchcraft, all of that. They all have certain rights and priesthoods and priests and priestesses that do these things. You know, this is why they have orgies to their gods, whether man on man, woman on woman, or man and woman, or man or woman on child, whatever, or man or woman on animal. There's a lot of foul stuff going on, and Jake is caught up, all up in it. But the Most High is going to put a stop to it. And you shall not walk in the manners of the nation. What are the manners of the nations? The things that they do. You shall not walk in them, which I cast out before you. Right. And the reason why they were being cast out was because of the acts that they were committing. For they committed all these things, and therefore I abhorred them, meaning I avoided them or removed them out of the land. But I have said unto you, you shall inherit their land, and I will give it unto you to possess it. Right. a land that flows with milk and honey. I am the Lord your power, which have separated you from other people. What was the separation? The separation from other people was the laws, statutes, and commandments that separated us from all other nations. That's what made us holy. We had a guideline, a set of rules to abide by to avoid the punishments that these nations were getting. They didn't receive that from the Most High. That was never introduced to them, by the Most High through a covenant of blood. You shall therefore put difference between clean beasts and unclean. Yeah, and this is why there are clean beasts, and this is why there are unclean beasts. And you're supposed to put difference between it, because these nations don't put a difference between them, because they were not separated. And between unclean fowls and clean, and you shall not make your souls abominable by beast, or by fowl, or by any manner of living thing that creepeth on the ground, which I have separated from you as unclean. And this is why the Lord showed Peter that vision of the sheet that was knit at the four corners with all manner of unclean beasts on it. He told him to rise up and kill and eat, Peter. And Peter said, not so. But he didn't understand at that time that that vision represented Israel in that unclean state, and that the Most High was going to clean them up by the words that Peter would teach him, the gospel. Just like Yahawashi told the disciples, now are you clean through the words which I have spoken unto you. It says, and you shall be holy unto me, for I the Lord am holy, and have severed you from other people. Right. So why, if the Most High came to save the world, why would he sever the Israelites away from all these other people? Because all nations will not be saved. The nations were set up and established to be what? To be our servants. That you should be mine. All right. Now, check that out. A man also or a woman that hath a familiar spirit, that's going into witchcraft, or that is a wizard, which is a male witch, shall surely be put to death. And the reason why people are emboldened to do these things is because these things are not followed. They are not practiced here. Although this is a so-called God-fearing nation, they shall stone them with stones, their blood shall be upon them. Right. Because when you killed someone, right, when you deleted them, there was an inquisition as to why this person was deleted. And if it was found out that the reason why they were deleted was because of some crime they committed against the law, then it was justified. Then the blood would be upon that person. But if it was found out that they didn't commit any offense against the law, then the blood would be upon the person that killed them. That's why I said eye for eye, tooth for tooth, life for life. Now, Jeremiah 10:1. Hear ye the word which the Lord speaketh unto you, O house of Israel. The message has been and will always be the same to the children of Israel, beginning with the men. The women, children also are part of it, but the Lord deals with the men. The men deal with the women and children. Thus saith the Lord Yahawah, learn not the way of the heathen. So this rebellious spirit that's being pushed out here, don't learn that. Don't be a partaker of that. Don't get involved with that. Because that will destroy you. All right? That will destroy you. And be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed. Right? Because the signs in heaven, which are the chariots, that is going to be the way Israel will be delivered. Deuteronomy 21:18. If a man have a stubborn and rebellious son, because now that whole thing where, if your parent beat you, your parents beat you because you're misbehaving, and they're trying to correct you so that you don't turn out to be an F up, and then the individual can call, the police or whatever agency against the parents. This causes the parents not to be able to do anything, and it causes the children to be more and more rebellious. But if this was applied, you wouldn't have that. So if a man have a stubborn and rebellious son, which will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and that when they have chastened him will not hearken unto them, Then shall his father and his mother lay hold on him, and bring him out unto the elders of the city, and unto the gate of his place. And they shall say unto the elders of the city, This our son is a stubborn and rebellious, rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. And all the men of his city shall stone him with stones, that he die. So shalt thou what? Put away evil from among you, and all Israel shall hear and fear. But this is why they're not hearing and fearing, because there's nothing being done to these little demons. They're just allowed to run rampant, and that's what's being pushed out here. Just the same way that witches have to raise their children. They can't show any love. They can't discipline them. They can't beat them. None of that. And that causes that demonic spirit to grow in these little devils. And that's the spirit that they're pushing out there to the rest of the world, especially to you Israelites. Isaiah 3 and 4. And I will give children to be their princes, and babes shall rule over them. That's why Esau is in power. There's nobody. And the people shall be oppressed. And this is what's happening. And whenever you try to do something right, you become more and more oppressed. It says, everyone by another, and everyone by his neighbor. The child shall behave himself proudly against the ancient. And that's why there's no respect anymore. These young kids don't even respect their elders. When we were coming up, we had to respect our elders. Otherwise, we would get our ass whooped. You know, you had to show reverence to the elders. You know, these children today, they're taught the total opposite. They'll curse an older person out in a minute and dare them to do something. And if they say, man, I'll tell you, they might shoot them. That's that demonic, rebellious spirit. That's why if Deuteronomy 21 was applied, you wouldn't have these little monsters out here. It says, the child shall behave himself proudly against the ancient, and the base against the honorable. And that's why Esau is behaving himself proudly against the honorable. Who is the honorable? We are, the Israelites. And these little ninjas, you know, they're just running rampant. Isaiah 3:12, as for my people, children are their oppressors. You know, Esau, and also children in general. And women rule over them, because this whole western side of the world is totally out of order. And they're pushing that demonic cup on the world so that everyone can be the same. And these nations, their leaders, because they want to get paid, they push that same agenda on their people. But in some cases, the people rebel because they're not with that demonic spirit. O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to err, meaning commit error, and destroy the way of thy paths. Because all of this behavior is going to lead to destruction ultimately. You know? So they're pushing this rebellion, but guess what? That rebellion is going to lead to destruction. And it can't come soon enough. This place needs to go, must go. You know, the sooner the better. So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. Till the next time I say, Shalom.